is Jennifer Booth-Bell, and I am a manager with the Boys Town National Training Department, formerly the director of the Boys Town National Reading Center. And as a parent and as a former teacher, I just wanted to see if I could provide you with some tips today on how you might be able to provide a little bit of support for your kids when they're at home. I know we are all dealing with a very difficult time, challenging and trying to balance all of the responsibilities that we have. Some of us are working from home. Some of us have kids that are working on schoolwork at home. And so trying to find time to get all of those things in is really challenging. But hopefully I can provide you with some tips that will help you out. And specifically today, I want to focus on some things that you can do when reading with your children at home. So the first thing I want to talk about today is just selecting books. Chances are that if you have a student that was in public or private school, they may have come home with a book to read that was assigned by their teacher, maybe even more than one book. But because we are not sure about how long our children may be out of school, it might be, you might find yourself at a point where your kids are running out of things to read, and you might have to help them select some new reading material. So some things I'm going to suggest is that you want to make sure that whatever you pick or whatever your child picks to read is of high interest, so they find it really appealing, and also that it's at the appropriate level, so that it is not too easy or too difficult for them to manage. So some suggestions that I might offer in finding the right book is to take a look at the front cover of the book. So for example, this is a book. I have a 5th grader and a 6th grader, both boys, at home. And my 6th grader is reading this book called The Giver by Lois Lowry. And this is something he's reading as a part of his literature group at school. But we're doing some of the reading at home now. And then he's reading some online with his teacher and fellow classmates. But if I were looking at this book as a possible choice, I would look at the cover and ask myself, would this be appealing to my child? You know your child more than anybody, and so you know what they're interested in and what appeals to them. So look at the front cover with that intent. Also, you might take a look at it and think about, does this align with my child's interests? Now, my son loves the outdoors, and he loves mysteries. So this book, the cover is kind of mysterious. It has a tree on it. There's an old man staring off into the distance, but you're not quite sure what he's thinking or feeling. So this is something that my son would totally get into. Another thing you want to think about is this book age appropriate and interest level appropriate? And there's a couple of ways you can determine that. Some books will have a little IL abbreviated on the back, and it will tell you the interest level of the book. It's usually found near the barcode in the lower corner. But if that information is not there on the book, you can also find that information often on Amazon.com, in their books section, or else at the publisher's website. So if you go to the publisher, you should be able to look up the title of the book, and it will tell you the interest level. You also might want to think about, is this appropriate for my child in terms of its themes or its language? If your teacher, your son or daughter's teacher has recommended this book, they've likely done that for you. However, if you're navigating a book for the first time, you might want to know more about it. So a couple of sites that you might want to check out to determine that are commonsensemedia.org, And we'll put that website on our webpage so that you can have access to that. Also, there's another website called Voya, V-O-Y-A, magazine.com. Both of those sites will provide you with short summaries of the book and also reviews of the book that will tell you if it's appropriate and for what age group. After you've looked at the cover and done some research, you might want to look at the inside of the book. Inside the book, I always try to look at the number of pages. This particular book has around 200 pages, which is a good length for my 6th grade son, maybe even my 5th grade son. But some guidelines to think about would be that for a 2nd or 3rd grade student, you might want to keep a book to 100 pages or fewer. For a 4th to 6th grade student or child, you might keep it to about 100 to 150 pages. And for a 6th to 8th grade student, you could go up as high as 250 pages. The reason we kind of recommend a specific book length is so that students or children have the opportunity to read many books as opposed to spending a large chunk of their time in only one book. This gives them access to different genres, different styles of writing, and also different topics that they can learn about. A second thing to look at in the inside of the book is just the size and the spacing of the print. As you can see, the size of the text in this book is pretty normal, and there's a good chunk of space between each line of text. Sometimes you might see that the text inside a book is very large, and your kids might see that as being reasonably juvenile, and that might deter them from wanting to read it. You also might find books that have very small print that's really squished together, and sometimes that can be hard, make it hard for your kids to follow along or stay focused. So take a look at the size of the print in the book, and that will help you. Of course, if you're reading an online book, you can use functions or features on your computer to increase the size of the text, and that's always helpful. A third thing to consider is the reading level of the book itself. Reading levels are typically reported in grade levels, or they're sometimes reported in what are called Lexile. Lexiles are just a numbering system that educators use to determine the level at which of difficulty at which the book is written. If you want to know more about what a Lexile is, Scholastic.com and other publishers will provide information about that, or you can just Google Lexile levels to get more information. Amazon will provide you with reading level information about each book that's on there. But another great way to determine whether a book is too easy or too hard for your child is to do what I call the 5-finger test. If you just ask your child to open to a random page in the middle of the book, I'll say this one, and ask them to read it to themselves or preferably out loud, and as they read, to put one finger up for each word that they come across that they either can't read or don't know. If they finish the page, they can look at how many fingers they have up. If they have only one finger up, chances are that the book might be too easy for them. If they have 2 fingers up, the book is probably just about right, but it may not be very challenging. If they have 3 fingers up, that book is appropriate, but may have some challenging parts that they might need support with. If they have 4 fingers up, that would mean that the book is at a level that might be more challenging and they need some support with. And if they have 5 fingers up at the end of reading one page, then you might want to consider choosing a different book. It might mean that they will have difficulty reading it entirely independently. Now, if you're reading with them the entire book, then you can go on the more challenging side. But if they're reading by themselves, you want to pick something that will provide them with some challenge, but it's easy enough for them to manage. The last thing you want to do before sitting down to read with your child is to look for some interesting words or vocabulary that you might want to talk about ahead of time. So if you just skim or scan kind of the maybe first chapter or first 2 chapters of a book, you can find some interesting words. So what I did in my book is I just flagged these areas of the book with little tabs or underlined them with pencil in the book, and tried to write a little definition maybe off to the side. So as we come across these words while we're reading, it might be an opportunity for us to stop and talk about some interesting ideas or words. The last thing to do is just to set aside some time to read. And I know that can be really challenging right now, especially for those of us who are trying to work from home as well. But I assure you, if you take just an opportunity to set aside 10, 15, 20, or even 30 minutes to read with your child, you will not regret it. Reading with your child gives you a great opportunity to have great discussions, to understand their opinions and their insights, and to really connect on a topic. So reading books together can give you awesome opportunities for great conversations after your reading is done. So there's just some tips on how to select a good book for your child. If you have any questions, you can contact us through our Facebook page or through boytowntraining.org. Thanks for your time, and I wish you the best in this challenging several weeks.